And now, please welcome Alexandra Grigore for our next interview. Alexandra is the Chief Product Officer at Simprints, a not-for-profit company that specializes in biometric technology. Thank you for being here today, Alexandra.
Hello, lovely to be here as well.
Good, great to meet you. So you're the Chief Product Officer at Simprints. Perhaps you could start by telling us, why was that organization founded? And perhaps you can just give some insights into what you do.
Yes, so Simprints was born from two major problems. The first one is that close to 1 billion people currently are invisible in the eyes of the economy because they don't have any birth certificate or identity papers or passports. So it's very difficult for them to identify themselves when they want to access a service. Secondly, there is also a lack of accurate data in international development, and government and organizations delivering global health services, for example, or humanitarian aid cannot provide effective services if they don't know who has been served and who has been missed. So as a consequence, billions of dollars intended to help those in poverty are currently falling through the cracks, and we have data to back this up. So Simprints has developed a new kind of tech for good, and in the previous conversation, there was a mention of AI for good, and we are also using AI to build the world's first safe biometric ID with privacy as its core, designed specifically for international development use cases. So this gives individuals a digital identity and in the same time ensures that every vaccine, every dollar, and every public good reaches the people who need them most.
Fascinating. And what role do you think AI will play in delivering your objectives within your organization?
Yeah, so our objective is to give people a unique ID that unlock access to life-saving services and continuity of care like immunizations or maternal health checkups or any other services that they are entitled to. So this ID also needs to respect a person's privacy and limit, ideally, the amount of identifying information the person needs to share with the service provider. So in our case, AI allows us to use a person's biometric features, like their unique points on their face or fingerprints, to create a unique string of numbers, which can be encrypted and transformed into a digital identity that doesn't require the original image to be kept or, frankly, like any other personal information. So in this way, you can have a safe and also an accurate proof of presence, as we call it, that the right person was in the right place receiving a life-saving medicine, vaccine, or intervention. So in our case, the AI algorithm can be trained on different representative data sets of your target population and can help identify individuals from a large data set and also prove that a specific number of unique individuals has been reached with a specific intervention. So take the COVID-19 vaccine example. Having a way of uniquely identifying people will help us understand exactly how many vaccines have been distributing, what's the coverage rate, what are the risks in a certain area. So in this case, using AI will help us make unintentional or intentional data errors in the way we talk about large-scale global interventions more difficult. And the numbers of people that have received a certain interventions can be trusted, which is definitely not the case today.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So if we think about AI more broadly, what do you think are the important considerations that we need to consider when we think about AI in the developing world?
So I think as it was mentioned in the panel and the interview before, we need to keep people and communities at the forefront on everything we do, and ideally also involve them in the design process and the decision-making process with respect to the use of the technology. And especially if you are developing AI to help the most vulnerable population, which I think is quite different than developing AI for the consumer market in the US or in the UK or somewhere in the West. It's even more imperative to design a solution with the context and the population in mind, because often if the solution is designed for the West, it doesn't really translate with a specific cultural context. I mean, this is valid for all technologies, right? Not just for AI, but I think that specifically for AI, we need to pay attention to the training data and the biases that the data might have. Every AI tech has some biases. It's impossible because it's made, through training of some sort of data, which usually will have some biases. And that's okay, right? We know that. I think you want to understand which biases your technology has, and what specific problems are you trying to solve? Because if you're trying to solve too many problems with AI, you're likely not going to succeed. So choosing a specific problem, understanding your biases. For example, if your AI works only for people with a certain skin tone, or your AI has diagnosed a certain rare disease in a specific country, that's okay. That's not a problem, but you need to advertise it as such and make it very, very clear to all the people involved to make sure the technology is not misused. The expectations are very clear to everyone, because I see currently a lot of news or a lot of people being quite disappointed about the technology because the expectations weren't set. So I'm looking, well, it was never supposed to do these things. And then all of a sudden, the entire world, is quite surprised that technology has failed in a certain context when the scientists behind that never intended it to be for anything else, right?
Yeah, no, I think you make a really good point. Transparency is absolutely key, right? So the kind of authors of the AI in its particular guise need to almost be revealed in the use case to make sure that it's understood how it's going to be used. I completely agree. What role do you think AI will play in humanity's survival? Big question, I know.
That's a big. Yes,
I saw you take a big, deeper breath.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, humanity survival. That's quite
Let's tackle
ambitious. So I think, funnily enough, I think AI and other technologies can help us fix the harm we've done with some of the technologies, right? Because a lot of the problems that we have right now are also consequence of some technologies, not necessarily digital technologies, even though that's also debatable, but other types of technology. So, assuming we can't go back in time and fix some of the problems that we've done as a humanity, I think AI can help specifically with poverty reduction. That's, I work in this field, so of course I'm biased. I think that AI will ultimately play a role in ending poverty and technology in general. It's too of a powerful tool not to play a role in this. So I think whether it's through improving access to life-saving services or improving the services per se, for example, in healthcare, there is a huge potential in AI for diagnostics and improving medical decisions, for example. So I think it can help us deliver better services and also access better services. In the case of Simprints, and for our very specific problem, we know that currently billions of dollars of health and humanitarian aid are not reaching the intended recipients. And within global health alone, there is a report that estimated that about $500 billion per year is being lost to corruption. And we don't even know how much is lost due to efficiency and effectiveness, right? So this is $500 billion in global health annually lost to corruption. So AI on its own is not going to miraculously solve all the problems, right? So I think it can make difficult things a little bit easier by the use of technology. And I think if we choose our technology well, we can use them as a lever to help us fight poverty, increase health, help our environment, reduce corruption, and things like that. So, it's very difficult to predict, but I am pretty confident that it will play a role in poverty reduction.
I really like that answer, and I think it's the first time today that we've had someone answer the question by talking about some of the problems that already exist and the way that AI can be used to apply, corrective action to those, whether it be water security or agriculture or healthcare or to your area, helping vulnerable people or refugees, whatever it might be. I think you're absolutely right. I think the potential is enormous. what would you say to individuals that are perhaps new to AI, that are looking to get involved? What advice would you give them so that they can start to immerse themselves in this emerging technology and this emerging capability?
My first advice would be to take the time to understand what AI is, because a lot of people are talking about AI, but not many people understand what it is. And it is a technology. So saying that you don't need to understand technology at all to work in AI, I mean, of course, I'm biased because I'm coming from a technology background, but I think it's quite risky. If you have no clue, you just heard it, you think it sounds cool, it's quite interesting, it's a hype, but you don't know what it involves. You don't know that AI, for example, requires a training data set, and that training data set can be collected in various ways, ethical or unethical. So really getting into the details of understanding technology, in my view, is the key, the first step in making a contribution in this field and understanding whether this is something that aligns with your own personal values and your own personal passions. So that would be the first thing. And then, of course, what other people have said already, thinking about the ethical frameworks, the regulatory frameworks, the data protection, and all the other implications. But you can't really think properly about all these other aspects if you don't understand how the technology works. So I would recommend people to do a Coursera course, for example, like AI, like Introduction to AI, or like a Udacity course. There's so many resources available online right now to get to those basics and those fundamentals. And then afterwards, you can decide which aspect and which area of AI do you want to get involved to. It is on the regulatory side, on the ethical side, on the technology side, on the business side. There are many, many aspects of AI that one can get involved with.
I think you're right. It starts with education, right? And I agree with you. There are so many resources available online that people can go to start getting immersed in this technology and learn more before they start to think about how they might contribute. Completely agree. So on that note, we've got a couple of minutes left. This wealth of knowledge that's available, what would you say? Which podcast, which book, which community, where should people go to, apart from Peace One Day and AI to Peace, of course, where else should people go to get informed?
I think because I'm coming from an engineering background, I would always say just do one of these courses. I would say Introduction to AI. I think it's on Coursera. Udacity has as well. I think is called, on Coursera, I think is AI for Everyone. And then Introduction to Artificial Intelligence is a Udacity course. So that will be my first go-to if you have no clue about AI. And then I would actually use Medium as a blog platform. There are so many interesting blog posts there. And there are also tutorials, like actual step by step. For example, if you're thinking about the use of AI for facial recognition, that would be something relevant for us, or AI for pretty much any use case, you'll find, a page there of how to get started with that, and which resources and so on. So I would first go to one of these platforms to do a proper course to get the basics, and then I would think which applications interest me. Oh, is it entertainment? Is it AI for good? Is it environment? Is it peace? Whatever it is, I would then look on Medium or on YouTube on specific resources for that use cases. First of all, to see if it sparks joy to you, right? If it sparks that creativity and that passion, that you want to go and read more, talk to people, and find out more about that subject.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. My daughter actually is 18 right now. She's interested in philosophy and is about to undertake an undergraduate degree in philosophy. But she's really interested in the intersection between philosophy and AI. So as we make computers that can think, how do we make sure that they're moral and ethical and and filled with justice? So no, I completely agree. That's great advice. Get educated. And get educated in a way that inspires you. I think that's fantastic. Listen, thank you very much for your contribution today. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you. Good luck in everything that you do. And I hope your organization continues to thrive. You're doing some fantastic work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.